The night she arrived at the edge of the Comanche winter camp, the snow was already swallowing her footprints as if the land itself wanted to erase the evidence of how far she had fallen, and she stood there shaking, not only from the cold that bit through her thin shawl, but from the humiliation burning in her chest, because only weeks ago she had been someone's daughter, someone's promise, someone with a future, and now she was nothing but a desperate woman with no shelter, no food, and no name anyone cared to remember. The men at the outer fire noticed her eventually, their laughter fading into suspicion, hands tightening around spears and rifles, eyes scanning her like prey or threat. And she knew what they were thinking, because she had already heard it, whispered in other camps and towns. A woman alone in winter was either cursed or dangerous. Her voice trembled when she spoke, offering the only currency she believed still had value herself in exchange for one night of warmth, one night of survival. Her eyes lowered in shame as the words fell from her lips. Some laughed cruelly, some looked away, and some measured her like an object already owned by the world's cruelty. That was when he stepped forward, tall Elk, the Comanche man known for silence and solitude, his broad shoulders bare to the snow, scars etched across his skin like stories the wind had carved there, his dark eyes holding neither hunger nor mockery, but something far heavier, recognition. He did not ask her name. He did not touch her. He did not smile. He simply removed his heavy buffalo cloak and draped it around her trembling shoulders, the warmth shocking enough to make her gasp, and said in a low, steady voice that carried authority, without cruelty that no one traded, flesh for shelter in his camp. Murmurs rippled through the men, but none challenged him, because tall Elk was a man shaped by loss, respected by endurance and feared by storms. He led her away from the fire, not to his lodge at first, but to the elders, declaring she would be a guest under his protection, and in Comanche law that meant her body and dignity were no longer negotiable. That night, as the wind howled and the teepee canvas snapped like warning drums, she lay wrapped in furs near the fire, staring at the shadows dancing on the walls, waiting for the cost she believed always came later, but none did. Instead, tall Elk sat across from her, sharpening a blade, saying little, yet ensuring the fire never died. When she finally whispered her name, Mara, he repeated it once, carefully, as if learning a prayer. Days passed. She helped the women, cooked, cleaned, learned words of the language, and slowly the camp stopped seeing her as an intruder and began seeing her as someone who stayed. Tall Elk never touched her, never demanded, never reminded her of what she had offered in desperation, and that restraint confused her more than cruelty ever had, because kindness without price was foreign to her wounds. One evening, when she finally broke and asked him why he had saved her, his jaw tightened, and he answered that once, long ago. Someone had failed to save the woman he loved, and he would not fail again, not even a stranger. And as the snow melted into memory and her laughter returned in small, fragile pieces, she did not yet realize that the shelter she had begged for was slowly becoming something far greater, a home. Spring did not arrive all at once, but crept into the Comanche lands the way healing enters a wounded soul cautiously, almost afraid to be noticed. And Mara felt that same quiet transformation unfolding inside her as the snow thinned and the earth breathed again, because for the first time since she could remember, she woke without fear tightening her chest, without calculating what she owed the world for another day of existence. She belonged now, not because she had been claimed, not because she had bartered her body or her future, but because she had been allowed to grow roots where she once only knew flight. Tall Elk watched her change from a distance at first, the way a man watches a sunrise he believes he does not deserve, noticing how her laughter returned in small, surprised bursts, how her hands moved with confidence as she worked beside the women, how the children followed her like birds sensing warmth. She had arrived broken and silent, but now her voice carried across the camp, firm and kind. And when disputes arose, she soothed them not with authority, but with understanding, a skill born from having known too much pain herself. Tall Elk felt something in him stir that he had buried beneath years of duty and grief, and it frightened him, because love once taken had nearly destroyed him. And yet every time he saw Mara kneeling by the fire at dusk, her hair catching the last light of the sun, he felt the pull of a future he had sworn never to imagine again. When illness swept through the camp, carried on the breath of lingering winter, it was Mara who refused rest, grinding herbs until her fingers blistered, cooling fevered foreheads through the night, whispering comfort into the dark. And Tall Elk watched her with a mixture of awe and quiet fear, because she gave herself without asking if the world would give back, the same way his lost wife once had. One night, when exhaustion finally forced her to sit, Tall Elk brought her water and food, kneeling before her, not as a warrior but as a man humbled by devotion. And she looked at him then, really looked at him, seeing not the intimidating protector the world knew, but the wounded soul beneath the scars, the man who had wrapped her in a cloak, instead of claiming what she had, offered in despair. It was that night, under stars sharp as memory, that he finally spoke of his past, of the winter raid that took everything from him, of the silence that followed, of how he had lived since, as if already half buried. And Mara listened without interrupting, without trying to mend what could not be undone, simply resting her hand over his, grounding him in the present. And something inside Tall Elk finally broke open, not with pain, but with release. Love did not arrive with sudden declarations or promises, but with shared mornings, with hands brushing in work, with glances held a moment longer than necessary, with the unspoken understanding that two people who had known hunger of the soul had found nourishment in each other. When Tall Elk asked her to remain, not as a guest, not as someone under protection, but as his chosen partner, his voice was steady, but his heart was not. And Mara wept, not from fear, but from relief, because for the first time, her future was not something taken or traded, but something freely offered. Their union was simple, honored by the elders and the land itself. And when they built their lodge together, each pole and hide placed by both their hands, it stood not as a symbol of ownership, but of equality, of survival, transformed into purpose. Seasons turned, children came, laughter replaced echoes of grief, and Tall Elk learned that strength did not mean standing alone, while Mara learned that love did not require surrender of self. Years later, travelers spoke of the Comanche warrior, who once lived like a shadow, and the woman who arrived with nothing but desperation. And they spoke not of a bargain made in winter, but of a family forged by choice, respect, and healing, proof that even the coldest night can give birth to a dawn worth waiting for, and that sometimes, when a woman trades herself for shelter, fate answers not with ownership, but with a home, a heart, and a future.